Namaskar. In this video, we will see what is hypoxia. Student, what is hypoxia? You tell. Hypo means less, oxia means oxygen. So, in the case of hypoxia, the tissue have low level of oxygen. Actually, there will be inadequate supply of oxygen to the tissues. That's why we are calling it hypoxia, less oxygen. Please don't confuse this hypoxia with the hypoxemia. Hypoxemia, is the low deficiency of oxygen in the tissues. Oxygen in not in tissues but actually in the blood. So deficiency of oxygen in the blood, it's called hypoxemia. But if there is a deficiency of oxygen in the tissues, inadequate supply of oxygen into the tissues, that called hypoxia. Now this hypoxia have four type on the basis of their region. First type is hypoxic hypoxia. Like, try to understand it. A person, he went at the higher altitude, like he went on a mountain, and then at a higher altitude, within 8 hours, he started to feel headache, he started to feel dizziness, he started to feel nausea, he started feeling of vomiting. That all indicate higher altitude sickness. Actually, at higher altitude, the partial pressure of oxygen is low. So at low partial pressure of oxygen, obviously at starting the person have to struggle. But if the person will stay, the body will, what our body do, that body will produce lot of erythropoietin protein, and that causes formation of lot of red blood cell and hemoglobin. So more hemoglobin present in those who are living at higher altitude. Okay, so this hemoglobin carry lot of oxygen and the issue will be solved. But at starting, that condition is that will create hypoxia. So at higher altitude, partial pressure of oxygen is low, that reduces level of oxygen in arterial blood, and that associated with the hypoxia. Fine. Next one is anemic hypoxia. Anemia is decreased oxygen carrying capacity of body, isn't it? In a person, hemoglobin is low, and when hemoglobin is low, obviously the hemoglobin should be something between 12 to 14 gram per deciliter in female, and 14 to 18 gram per deciliter in male, right? It should be, the hemoglobin should be present between this range. Now when hemoglobin decreases, oxygen carrying capacity of body decreases. And this oxygen carrying capacity decreases, that's called anemia. Okay, this condition is called anemia, and this anemia lead to hypoxia. Now there can be innumerable reason of anemia, like if the person have iron deficiency and hemoglobin do not synthesize, that called iron deficiency anemia. Vitamin B12 deficiency possible, folic acid deficiency possible. In vitamin B12 deficiency is called pernicious anemia. Folic acid deficiency, we are calling it megaloblastic anemia. Sometimes bone marrow get dry, that called aplastic anemia. But these all ultimately causes anemic hypoxia. And then we have stagnant hypoxia due to any reason, student, like heart failure, vessel constriction in the blood vessel, the diameter of blood vessel got narrow, and the low temperature, cold temperature, blood circulation decreases. And that when the blood circulation will decrease, obviously the oxygen transport to the each tissue will decrease, and that condition is called stagnant hypoxia. Fine. And then we have histotoxic hypoxia. A person went through any kind of poisoning, he taken some kind of poisonous thing, or whatever reason he went through any kind of cellular poisoning. In that condition, the tissues will unable to utilize oxygen, and that is called histotoxic hypoxia. As for example, in the case of cyanide poisoning, cyanide, it's something that will block electron transport chain. You all know that oxygen is final electron acceptor, so that will be blocked, and that causes death of the person even. And so that's called the cyanide ion is actually is block the utilization of oxygen in the electron transport chain. So it's example of it's this is one region that causes histotoxic hypoxia. And in that hypoxia, there is lot of cell injury. Actually, see, for survival any cell need ATP, isn't it or not? And ATP, you all know that ATP form in mitochondria after electron transport chain. And after electron transport chain there is a process called oxidative phosphorylation, right? That produces a lot of ATP. Fine. And that ATP used in innumerable processes, like you see the most important function of ATP, maintaining a sodium potassium pump. In that they will always pump 3 sodium outside and 2 potassium inside, so they will maintain sodium and potassium gradient. And the sodium level, is directly related to water absorption. Fine. If sodium gradient will maintain, proper volume of water will enter. Yeah, that's required. And water is whole and soul for cell, and if like by any reason ATP got low and sodium ion got low, then calcium ion will start to enter inside the cell. And this calcium ion once enter inside the cell, they will activate many protein digesting enzyme, and that protein digesting enzyme will digest cell skeleton in the cell. When cell skeleton will damage, the cell will also die. Okay. This calcium ion can cause a lot of lactic acid formation. They will activate phospholipase that will digest phospholipid present in their plasma membrane. And then they can die. They can even possible that endonuclease enzyme that can activate, and that causes fragmentation of DNA and RNA. And they can this calcium ion can leak inside the mitochondria. They can diffuse inside the mitochondria, I mean when it's present in high level. And they will cause leakage of cytochrome C. And once cytochrome C leaked, then khatam, tata, bye bye. Why? Because this cytochrome C will leaked out, it will cause apoptosis in cell. Yeah, what is apoptosis? Apoptosis is programmed cell death. The cell will die, right? So very dangerous it is, right? So ATP maintenance is required. And for maintenance of ATP, see, without ATP, students, hello, without ATP, only 36 without 8, I mean sorry, without oxygen also ATP will form by glucose. See, when oxygen is present, then 36 to 38 ATP form. And when oxygen is absent, then hardly 2 ATP will form by oxidative phosphorylation by the process of anaerobic glycolysis. Fine. So ATP is required, and for ATP oxygen is required. Okay. And low level of oxygen is called hypoxia.